The room was quiet when the news broke. Just after dawn, a single statement began circulating through Hollywood. No dramatic press conference, no spectacle. Just a confirmation that felt unreal even as the words appeared on screens across the world. Robert Duvall had passed away at the age of 95. For decades, he had been one of the last living pillars of a generation that defined modern cinema. And now that era had lost one of its most powerful and most understated voices. He was never the loudest man in the room. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't build a career on controversy. He built it on control, on restraint, on the kind of presence that made silence feel heavier than dialogue. To millions, he will forever be Tom Hagen from The Godfather. The adopted son, the consigliere, the calm strategist in a world of rage and revenge. While others exploded with emotion, Duvall stood still, calculating, composed, always watching. But long before he entered the Corleone family, Robert Duvall was simply a young man from San Diego, born on the 5th of January 1931, into a military family. Discipline shaped his early years. Structure was normal. Duty mattered. Those qualities would later echo in his performances. Characters who carried responsibility like a weight they had learned to bear without complaint. He studied acting in New York at the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater. Among his classmates were future legends like Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. They were young, unknown, struggling, sharing small apartments, taking odd jobs, auditioning constantly. Back then, success was just a distant possibility. Duvall's early film work came in 1962 with To Kill a Mockingbird. His role as Boo Radley was almost wordless, hidden, observing from the shadows. Yet, even without dialogue, he created something unforgettable. It was a sign of what would define his career, doing more with less. Then came 1972. Francis Ford Coppola cast him in a crime drama that no one could have predicted would redefine cinema. The Godfather wasn't just a film. It became a cultural landmark. Surrounded by titans like Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, Duvall could have faded into the background. Instead, he became the film's quiet backbone. Tom Hagen didn't need to shout. He didn't need to threaten. His power came from clarity and intelligence. Every scene he entered gained balance. He represented loyalty without chaos, logic without ego. The performance earned him an Academy Award nomination and cemented his place among Hollywood's elite. But Duvall wasn't interested in repeating himself. In 1979, he appeared in Apocalypse Now, again under Coppola's direction. This time, he transformed into Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore, charismatic, fearless, unpredictable. His now legendary line about loving the smell of napalm in the morning became one of the most quoted moments in film history. It was bold, magnetic, slightly unhinged, and it proved something critical. Duvall wasn't confined to one type of character. He could be controlled and calm or dangerously exuberant. He could lead quietly or dominate explosively. Then in 1983, he delivered what many consider his most personal performance in Tender Mercies. As a washed-up country singer battling alcoholism and regret, Duvall stripped away any trace of theatricality. The role was raw and human. No glamour. No bravado. Just a man confronting himself. That performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. And when he accepted it, true to form, he did so without excess. Gracious. Grounded, focused on the craft rather than the spotlight. Over 6 decades, Duvall built a filmography of extraordinary range. Courtroom dramas, westerns, war epics, intimate character studies. He never relied on trend or image. He chose stories that mattered, and characters with depth. Directors trusted him. Younger actors studied him. On set, he was known for preparation and precision. He didn't waste energy. He didn't overcomplicate scenes. He listened, reacted, and elevated everyone around him. As the years passed, he slowed down, but never truly stepped away. Films like The Judge reminded audiences that even in his 80s, he possessed the same emotional authority that had defined his youth. Off-camera, Duvall avoided the chaos of celebrity life. He spent much of his later years away from Hollywood's spotlight, living quietly with his wife, Luciana Pedraza. He preferred horses to red carpets, conversation to interviews. Fame, he often implied, was secondary. When news of his passing broke, tributes flooded in within hours. Directors, actors, and critics described him with the same words again and again: disciplined, authentic, irreplaceable. Clips from The Godfather resurfaced everywhere. Scenes from Apocalypse now trended once more. Film schools replayed Tender Mercies as a masterclass in subtlety. But beyond the iconic roles was something deeper, a career built on integrity. In an industry often driven by noise, Robert Duvall proved that stillness could be more powerful. Reports from those close to him say his final days were peaceful. He was surrounded by family. There was no dramatic farewell, no public spectacle. And according to one close friend, his final words reflected the simplicity that defined his life. Do your work well. 4 words. Not about fame, not about awards, not about legacy. Just the work. It sounds almost like advice passed down to the next generation. Actors stepping into an industry that moves faster, louder, and more aggressively than ever before. Robert Duvall's passing is more than the loss of a legendary actor. It marks the fading of a standard, a reminder of a time when performance was about truth, not volume. As confirmation of Robert Duvall's death spread across the industry, the reactions carried something deeper than routine condolences. This wasn't just the loss of a respected actor. It was the departure of a craftsman whose standard quietly shaped generations, from studio executives to independent filmmakers. One theme echoed repeatedly. He never chased greatness. He worked for it. Directors who collaborated with him described a man who arrived prepared, focused, and completely present. Francis Ford Coppola once remarked that Duvall had an instinct for truth that couldn't be taught. In The Godfather, he wasn't simply acting as Tom Hagen. He seemed to understand the machinery of power itself. His pauses were intentional. His glances calculated. He embodied loyalty without weakness. Al Pacino, reflecting on their time together, once said that sharing scenes with Duvall required absolute precision. If you weren't grounded, he noted, he would outplay you without raising his voice. That restraint became Duvall's signature. In an era when cinema often rewarded grand gestures and explosive monologues, he mastered minimalism. A raised eyebrow, a tightened jaw, a subtle shift in tone. He trusted the audience to lean in, and audiences did. When Apocalypse now returned to streaming platforms following the news of his death, younger viewers rediscovered Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore with fresh fascination. On the surface, Kilgore was flamboyant, blasting Wagner from helicopters and delivering one of cinema's most quoted lines. But beneath the bravado was a chilling commentary on war and detachment. Duvall balanced charisma with menace so precisely that the character became both entertaining and disturbing. Few actors could walk that line without tipping into caricature. Duvall never did. As the tributes grew, so did appreciation for the full scope of his career. Films like The Apostle, which he wrote, directed, and starred in, resurfaced in discussions about his depth as a storyteller. That 1997 performance earned him another Academy Award nomination and revealed something personal. A man wrestling with faith, ego, redemption. It wasn't flashy, it was intimate. Hollywood often celebrates transformation, but Duvall's power wasn't about physical extremes. It was psychological immersion. He didn't become characters in an obvious way. He understood them from the inside out. Even in later years, he refused to fade into background roles. In The Judge 2014, he delivered a performance so raw and layered that critics called it one of the finest of his career. At 83 years old, he stood toe-to-toe with Robert Downey Jr. and reminded audiences that mastery doesn't diminish with age. It sharpens. Beyond the screen, colleagues consistently described him as private but generous. He mentored without spectacle, offered advice without ego. He believed acting wasn't about chasing stardom, but about serving the story. In interviews, he often downplayed awards. The Oscar for Tender Mercies sat not as a trophy of validation, but as a symbol of work completed honestly. He valued discipline over celebrity. Perhaps that's why his reported final words resonate so strongly. Do your work well. There's something timeless about that message. In a culture consumed by metrics, followers, and instant recognition, Duvall represented a different philosophy. Longevity built on consistency. Film historians now speak of him as one of the last bridges between classical Hollywood and modern cinema. He worked with giants of the 20th century and adapted seamlessly into the 21st without losing authenticity. He never reinvented himself for trends. He refined himself through experience. Streaming services have already begun curating in memory of Robert Duvall collections. Film schools are planning retrospectives. Younger actors are revisiting his performances not just to admire them, but to study them. What made him so effective? Control listening. Commitment to truth. He understood that acting wasn't about performing emotions loudly. It was about allowing them to exist naturally. That philosophy influenced countless performers who followed. But perhaps the greatest testament to his legacy isn't found in awards or headlines. It's found in the quiet respect of his peers. When news anchors announced his death, their tone shifted. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just reverent. Because Robert Duvall didn't need embellishment. He leaves behind more than an extraordinary filmography. He leaves behind a blueprint for how to build a career without sacrificing integrity, for how to command attention without demanding it, for how to remain grounded while standing among legends. At 95, he had witnessed nearly a century of change, in culture, in cinema, in society, and through it all, he remained steady. The screen will continue to flicker with his performances long after this moment fades. Tom Hagen will still advise the Corleones. Kilgore will still stand on that Vietnamese beach. Max Sledge will still search for redemption in a small Texas town. Art grants a kind of immortality. But what makes Robert Duvall's story powerful isn't simply that his characters endure. It's that his approach endures. Work hard, stay disciplined, tell the truth, and do your work well. With his passing, Hollywood says goodbye to one of its quiet giants. Not a man of noise, but of depth. Not a symbol of excess, but of mastery. The curtain falls gently, and the legacy stands firm,